everybody. Welcome to this issue of the Book Report. I am happy to have you here joining me today, and I am very excited to share with you a book series called Crafting for Murder. And the latest by Barbara Emodi, and the latest book, Crafting for Slander. Oh my goodness. I have an interview coming up in just a couple minutes, and I wanted to share with you a couple of things. Number one, Barbara Emodi is so incredibly skilled, both as a sewist and as an author. I'm not going to do a spoiler alert. I'm not going to spoil anything for you. But after I was done interviewing her and we were not recording, I said to her, okay, who did it? Because I was about halfway through the book at that point, and she said, "Oh, you have to finish reading the book." I go, "Don't worry, I'm going to finish reading the book." But who did it? And then she told me, and I went, "What?" Yeah, I was a little surprised. So please, without further ado, here is my interview with Barbara Emodi. Enjoy the entire thing. She is an incredible delight. Get all of her books. If you are remotely like me and you love murder mysteries, in part because it's the whole mystery part, um, and yeah, it's the whole mystery part, right? Um, but these murder mysteries, like they're on the scale of the Benny Harper murder. Oh, just so good. You guys remember Benny Harper mysteries, right? You gotta see them. So stay tuned, and I will see you at the end of the show. Thank you for joining me for this delightful interview with Barbara. Oh my gosh, it was so wonderful to interview her. She's so incredibly fascinating. Anyone who can take take flat fabric and make garments out of them, like that is a skill set, friends, that I do not have. And I am so glad that there are people in my life who do have that skill set. Please take a moment and head over to Barbara's website. She's got this fabulous blog, and she writes thoughts about what it's like aging. Because, it happens to all of us. And she just shares these amazing things. So head on over to her blog. Thank you for joining me. And don't forget on my blog to sign up. I'm going to do a giveaway. I'm glad you stayed this long. I am doing a giveaway over on the blog at TerifiCreations.com. And you'll see, hopefully it'll pop up right about here. I'm going to run the giveaway. I'm going to run the giveaway from May 7th when the blog posts to May 14th. I'll leave it open for that long. And then on the 8th or 10th, I'll draw a winner. So don't forget to go over and sign up for that. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for joining me on the Book Report. Hi, Babs. It's so lovely to meet you. I have been like devouring book three of your series right now with C&T. It is delightful. It really is delightful.
Thank you.
So, can you tell me a little bit about what brought you into writing these books?
Well, I think it's something that any quilter or sewer or crafter would identify with.
Mhm.
And that is this whole sense of community
Mm,
that you get together. Now, my grandmother, and I'll send you a picture, was in a group called the So-and-Sos.
mm,
They formed in 1920. They met for over 60 years, and they were quilters, so they did everything. anything that was a fad. It's almost like a record of the craft history of North America. They did everything.
So is that where this group in the book in the series comes from?
Yeah, so what I got from, and that I have myself taught sewing and many other things for over about 35 years. I'm teaching 2 sewing classes in 2 days. And one of the things that really struck me is it's women get together and they talk. They talk about their lives and they talk about uh, they take their projects very seriously. They help each other out. So I felt after my history that my head was full of stories, like full of stories that I had heard. And I thought it's not just the product that interests me. I mean, obviously, I've devoted my life to making stuff. It's not just the product, but I wanted to talk about the women who made things and how they look at the world. And then I thought there's so much ingenuity in quilting in particular. I wrote a little story for Love of Quilting, which is about Al Capone's sock, but it was based on I know it's great. But my grandmother used to save Depression housewife that knitted tops of socks she'd knitted. And when she had darned the feet out, there was nothing left. She cut off the tops and she crazy quilted them into these amazing quilts. And I just thought there's so much just like lateral thinking and creative, like making do. And I thought this is problem solving a mystery that I would contend that creative people problem solve and think outside the box and discuss things with each other all the time. And so I decided to write these stories about crafty women. I also, if you ask me, my one theme would be there's nothing ordinary about ordinary women.
I read that on your blog this morning, and the post that went with that, I was enthralled with that. In part, it was there, you think you're an ordinary woman, and yet uh there's there's this richness of thought that comes with you. And part of it is the problem solving, part of it is the being present, part of it's the making do, part of it is just this mystery about what's going on behind in her head. Like that was just so beautiful.
Well, I think the whole idea of creative intuition, and I'm getting more and more aware, particularly when I teach, how people access their intuition and help each other. So I read a book, just it was it's making, I forget what it's about, basically about magic. And what it says is there are creative ideas that are cruising around and kind of enter a receptive mind.
Mm.
So I've seen in classes, someone would say, I made a mistake, it's a mess. And immediately 3 women were over say, this is what you can do.
Yes, right. I know when I'm teaching quilting, somebody will tell me, like, my students and I have long had a talk about critiquing their work.
Yes,
We tend, because we're working, 6 to 10 inches away from it, we know where all the bodies are buried.
yes,
How about for a murder mystery? But we also have to take a look at what went right, because
yes.
because if we're not doing that, we're missing out on half the information
I
that,
love that. I love that. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And that is where I think a lot of creative things come. And sometimes I'll run into someone who say, I'm not creative. And I don't believe that.
Mhm.
And say, where do I start? Because they have this idea that they're going to be hit by a big idea. And I say to them, reduce what you have to work with. Take a few colors, a few shapes. That to me is the Depression quilters who did, I mean, that was the golden age of quilting when people had probably less time and resources ever. And often when you have to work within limits, you have to access something outside of yourself. And I think that's where the magic really happens.
Well, oddly enough, so this as I'm perusing this morning, you wrote this. My best ideas came when I was sewing. The predictable regularity of stitches marching out from under a presser foot steadied my nerves. The act of taking nothing but a paper pattern, flat fabric, and a spool of thread and making something of it built hope into my life. And I'm sitting there going, yes, yes. Like you, it's not just that you get it. It's like you get it. You understand. And part of it is, I think, at least from in my own experience, there's this dynamic where we actually stop thinking and start this passive thinking that happens, and the ideas can come. The ideas, the problem solving, kind of come from there.
Exactly. So I love that. And often when I have students who are like new students are struggling, and if I'm doing a garment class, I know there's that moment where we'll go into the bathroom at the store, wherever I'm teaching, and they'll put it on and they'll say, I made that. I
Yeah.
made that. Like, and most people don't really get that opportunity in their life, particularly, women with jobs or children or taking care of, parents. They have so many commitments, and to just do that, I mean, that's why I teach that moment. Or when somebody holds up a quilt and they say, I did this myself. And I want to say, yeah, because you're somebody,
Mhm.
you're somebody who can do it.
Now, do some of your ideas for what will happen in the book come when you're stitching?
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes I can get overwhelmed a little bit because, well, firing off all these ideas, and I will sew, and there's a methodical, the combination between being creative and kind of random ideas and just the methodical process, like the stitching or pressing,
Mhm,
you stand, you press, it's very many, many seams. And often that will kind of reel me back and help me focus.
mhm,
So yeah, no, I do get a lot of ideas, and I do escape to my sewing room
mhm.
when I need to settle myself down. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, you can behind you, I can see some of your ideas. Like they're just popping out of the wall.
I know. And that's just actually a small part, but yeah,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, I can relate. I can see my fabric stash from here and my thread stash, which rivals my fabric stash. Um, in this particular book, um, it, who was your favorite? Who was the character that was easiest to write?
That is very interesting. I think Valerie's always easy to write. Darlene, her cousin and best friend, is easy. And
Mhm.
actually, my best friend was sitting on a beach on vacation, and she texted me. She says, "I'm Darlene, aren't I?" And I said, "Yes, you are."
Oh.
Which is, um, I find kind of the humorous characters are most fun to write. I mean, uh, yeah, I think I I actually worked for politicians, so in crafting for slander, some of that's there, and there are pieces of real politicians in all the ones in the book.
That's fascinating.
And I was interviewed actually on radio, and they said, "Are you worried about your slander?" And I said, "No. If anyone recognizes themselves, they only have themselves to blame because it's not flattering." But I think the whole idea of the way the women come together and
Mhm,
help Darlene, like Darlene's underestimated. That's why
mhm,
she's interesting. We all know the hairdresser who does hair in her basement of her house, but she's very clever, and she wants to do something, and everybody kind of underestimates her except the other crafters, and they pitch in. I enjoyed that a lot. I love all my characters. I mean, they're real to me now at this point.
can you tell us a little bit, or for the audience, can you tell us a little bit about the premise of this particular book?
Well, this particular book is it's about, I think, a very common scenario, which is a small rural community, and there's pressure for it to amalgamate into a bigger, blander town.
Hmm.
And they are Gasper's Cove is a little island connected by a causeway, and basically the local women, the main character and her cousin, just decide they want to maintain their own identity. So they run. Um, she so Darlene, the character's best friend, runs for mayor, which actually is fairly challenging to the political establishment around there. So one of the candidates, the outgoing mayor, is killed. There is a son, the senator's son, who is basically, I was going to say sort of a Kennedy type family thing, is going to inherit that role. And I think that it had to do, and that book was a little bit about the power of women, of ordinary women. And my favorite scene in that is when one of the other candidates says that these ladies should stick to their own knitting. And
I
he
love that so much.
and they crash the debate to which they have not been invited because their poll numbers aren't good enough, and they whip out their knitting and they all start knitting during the debate. I love that scene. Um, yeah.
I, I read that this morning with great glee. Like, never underestimate women with knitting needles. Just don't.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's kind of the premise there. Um, and yeah, and I think that's a theme through all of my books.
Hmm. It's I have to say it was really fun because the colors were all the color was coordinated, and they just because they know people, they're invested in the community, they were able to get those front seats and be present to what was going on and say, look, we're not it's not that we're not going to be trifled with, but don't don't put us in the
Don't
back pew.
don't diss my network, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the ushers were grandchildren, so they got all the ladies in the front row. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and in the quilting sewing community, when some tragedy happens, what do? We go to our sewing machines because there is great comfort in taking care of other people.
Yes. Yes.
Now, this isn't the first book series that you've written.
No.
So
Uh,
you're on book series number two. Can you tell me a little bit about the first series?
okay. Well, it's all the same world. So
Okay.
this is crafting for mystery, and these are larger books.
Right.
I'm writing book four now, but this last year I decided I liked, well, 2023, I decided I liked a lot of the minor characters. So
Okay.
I decided to do basically four novellas. Those are shorter, those are like 2-day reads, one for each season, that allowed me to take a minor character and tell their story. And I love those. I love those. So the first one, this spring one, is a woman who works as a florist in one of those garden centers in the parking lot of a supermarket,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
which my sister has done. The second one was about a building inspector. Again, an ordinary little man who's, just people don't pay a lot of attention to, and a body that is discovered in a renovation. So
Ooh.
the third one is about seniors in an assisted living, because my mom's in assisted living, so I've been visiting them, and there's some real characters there. And they may or may not have a little bit of witchcraft going on there because it's
Mhm.
Halloween. And the last one is Last Ditch Effort, which is about sewing against your will for a Christmas concert.
Oh,
which all the characters from the previous three seasons are all come together in that one.
I like
And
that a lot.
building The building inspector proposes in the parking lot of the assisted living facility, and it was very romantic. There's snow falling on the street lamps, and he's on his knee, and he has to be helped up from his knee. But yeah, so I had great. I love that little series too.
It does look like a lot of fun. It does look like now, how long have you been sewing?
Oh, I've been sewing since I was 8.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in a small town in Midwest Canada in Manitoba. That's where I was from originally. And I was the oldest of 4 girls, and my youngest sister was deaf, and my mother had her hands full, and there was no summer activities. And I was driving her crazy. So she sent me off to the Singer Sewing School, which was all adults. And at age 10, I made a fully lined pink wool suit with bound buttonholes, which, like, where do you wear that when you're 10?
Nowhere, but gosh, the skill level is off the hook.
Well, that was because I was with adult women, and I just loved it. And I also felt just calm when I was sewing. So through my life, I've taught sewing and I sewed, and I've said in my blog, and I've said in a couple places, one of the weirdest things I did, it was an accidental job, but I ended up press secretary for a person who was running and later became the equivalent of a governor in Nova Scotia. And I had to be on the campaign bus with him for the whole election, which was 32 days. And I thought I will lose my mind. So, so all he wanted to do was eat Doritos and talk on the phone. I thought I can't deal with it. So I got those old black computer bags. I took the computer out and I put a little sewing machine in there. And then we would go to these hotels, and I was supposed to write speeches or do whatever. But so I would say, up, I've got to work. So I would go up to my room and I would sew. And I thought, with these seams, I will not kill you.
Yeah.
And then when everybody was asleep, I would go down to the hotel office center and use their computer and write and print whatever I had. And I told them when the whole thing was over, but honestly, it saved my life and his.
Uh, yes, I may know that experience vividly.
I know. But it's something you can tell to another person who sews, and they think, yes, of course you did.
Yes, yes, of course you did. I get it. That I think that is why the Singer featherweights are still so wildly popular because you can take them anywhere.
A big enough purse, I have put a Singer featherweight in. Yeah. No, they're
Yeah,
great.
I can. Yeah, I know. Can our purses get any bigger? Now, have you ever made your own purses?
I have. I've made everything. I like everything. And actually, I'm now kind of, after so much garment sewing, I really got into quilting. I have a sister who's a wonderful quilter. And so she takes me out, and I keep buying all this fabric, and I keep saying, we're still buying fabric. She says, you will use it one day. You will use it one day. Just take. And then she's introduced me to the concept of, like fat quarters. Like you never walk out of anywhere without some fat quarters. So I'm really into that. I like the freedom of quilting after garments.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. Um, so I'm pretty excited about that right now.
What's the quilt that you're working on right now?
Well, I'm actually working on some seasonal table runners, which is like so for my living room. I've just decided, but I'm doing some free-form strip quilting.
Okay.
I was doing like, very traditional patterns
Mm-hmm.
uh, for, for things, and did some baby quilts, and I did part of some big bed quilts, but I decided to just let the fabric tell me what it wanted to do. Um, I'm really enjoying that actually, because I think fabric knows I'm particularly with quilting. I think sometimes the fabric knows what it wants to do.
Yeah.
And like when you and the fabric are on the same wavelength, it just
Mhm.
comes together. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
And has anything surprised you about learning about the process of quilting not as opposed to, but that's different than garment sewing?
That's a really good question because I was a bit concerned about that because my
Okay.
sister would say, like she'd tell me she's working on something that was 568 pieces. And I'm thinking, she's that kind of quilter. And I'm thinking, that's really like I only do two sleeves. Like, is that going to be all right? But I've realized that what I really like about quilting is the meditative aspect.
Hmm.
The repetition, it's actually because I can't meditate. It's so boring, but
Great.
but I find that repetition and the stitches, like you actually respect the stitching and the fabric more than garments. Like garments is almost more like manufacturing. You're trying to make a thing. And in
Hmm.
quilting, you're what you're deeper into is the process. And I do find quilting is surprising. Like a shirt will look like a shirt. I have an idea in my head. I've never quilted anything that I haven't thought, whoa, there's some surprises here. Uh, does that make sense to you?
It it does. Uh, and I can almost see, having worked in a quilt shop and having worked with quilters for a long time, there is a definite process to not only the quilting techniques itself, but where we as quilters eventually end up.
Yes.
And part of that is we start in traditional, what we consider to be traditional patchwork, and then we go find out who we are in
Oh,
the quilt making.
exactly. And I think, I mean, I kind of apprenticed in the traditional stuff, which I think was good for technique.
Mhm, absolutely.
Very important for technique, but it's true. It's true. Like it does capture, then you are expressing yourself. Anyway, I think I'm going to go like disappear into that world for quite a long time now. Yeah.
It, yeah, and so what machine are you sewing on?
I have sewn on pretty much everything, but right now I am sewing on, I'm looking at it now, a Bernina Record 900 electronic,
Oh,
which I love, which I love. And I actually buy a lot of sewing machines secondhand, a lot of old Berninas, and I give them away. I've given 7 away recently. So I get them. My husband works on them. I work on them. I once bought actually a Singer Rocketeer. It's a great machine. And a guy had it in his outside in his yard for years. And it
oh,
was like unbelievable mess. So I just sat the grandchildren up with like mountain of Q-tips and just clean away. But I do that, and then people come to my house, particularly a new sewer, and I teach them something, and then I give them a machine when they leave.
oh, that's lovely. Uh,
Yeah,
and
no,
if you can do that, I've loved the journey into computerized
yeah.
sewing machines for a couple of different reasons. But if you can make a buttonhole on a mechanical machine, it's a thing of beauty. It really is.
Well, I mean, I like many different machines, but I do like that Bernina stitch,
Mhm.
straight stitch foot on, and yeah, and that hook, I mean, the Pfaff hook is good. When Pfaff were the only people with a built-in walking foot, that was nice. I
Mhm.
like that, but I've given my Pfaffs to people. But no, I think this machine and I will stay together for a long time. And when I visit, that's something everywhere I stay when I travel, like my kids and any relatives, I have a sewing machine in their house. So, because you arrive and they always say, can you fix this? I mean, I've got like stuff here. Like, so they save their mending. And last time I was in California, they had a dinner party. I had a good time. And then on the way out, my son said, "Oh, my mom sews." And then next morning, hanging on their front doorknob was a bag full of jeans to be hemmed that some guy had got.
Oh, that's good stuff.
I mean, if you sew, oh, the worst story was my sister, one of my, I have three sisters, one of my sister's weddings. I arrived, I'm thinking, this is great. I've been teaching a lot of classes. I was kind of tired. I thought, I'll go to this wedding, we'll get dressed up and I'll relax. I still haven't even picked my bag up off the carousel. And my sister says, look, we got a bit of a problem. One of the bridesmaids has just got a big rose tattoo right here, and her grandmother's going to have a fit. So, would you mind altering the dress to cover it? So the rest of them are all at the rehearsal having a grand old time. And I'm piecing this extra, trying to find some. Oh yeah, it was yeah. And I thought this is my fate. Barbara will end up sewing no matter what goes on.
And clearly you say yes, which is a gift. That is a real gift to people. That is a real gift.
People know nothing, honestly. I knew because you can tell why I can write these stories because I heard I knew a woman who owned a tailor shop, and she had somebody come into her tailor shop and have her cut off the labels. They didn't even know how to do that themselves. So I think I've lost some sound here. Have I lost sound? No, I guess not.
I don't, I still hear you.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, so I sort of feel it's such a good life skill. Everybody who even hints they want to learn how to sew, they
So,
come to
and when did you start teaching sewing?
uh, I think I was living in Australia, Melbourne, Australia,
Okay.
and I was working like I think all my paid jobs I'm totally unqualified for. You need to know that. But I was teaching writing in a school of architecture, building, and interior design. And somebody said, we need someone to show our students, the interior design students, how to sew. I said, man, that's like more interesting than what I'm doing. So I did that. And then I was one of, I think there was like 1,500 like men on staff in that particular technical institution. I was one of like three women. So all these guys signed up. And then I did class, actually there were two brothers, the Cripps brothers. They made matching velvet pants. They were, they were so funny. And they said to me, they'd been sheet metal workers. And they said, I can't do the accent. They said, it's just like sheet metal. You cut it out flat and you make it round. And I just thought, I have never laughed so much in my life as I have teaching sewing. So I just kept up.
Oh, wow. But I love how I love how what they do as sheet metal and working in sheet metal translated in their like almost transliterated in their head to what they were doing with the fabric.
They were wonderful. They made gorgeous pants.
Right, and they probably it must have been wonderful to watch them work with, first of all, velvet,
Yeah.
right? I would be terrified of I've been I've been quilting for 30 years and sewing. I don't understand body shape very well, but I've been sewing since, I would make my own skirts and that kind of thing. But velvet, like, so you don't crush it.
Velvet's tricky. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, but they just took it on. That's just fabulous.
Yeah. And I actually have learned, I think that's something sewing's taught me.
Hmm.
You just take it on, right? Like,
Right.
how hard can it be? And I always say in my classes when people get stressed out, you always get someone who say, that made me say, I say, look, we're not performing brain surgery here, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
No, this is not a degree granting institution. We're just, making stuff and having fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even in the beginner quilting classes, that's the same approach. We're having fun.
Yeah.
We're really having fun. What's the most fun thing that you've ever made?
Oh, my goodness. I think, uh, oh my God. I think everything I've made is fun. One, I think maybe one of the fun in terms of laughing was one of my sisters got married and she had this vision. I think she wanted to look like a wedding cake. Anyway, it was like layers and layers and layers of silk organza, and it just looks so fluffy. Her kids are hysterical when they look at the pictures. But that was really fun because we kept doing a ruffle, and she'd say, more ruffles and more ruffles. And that was like, it was fun. Yeah. I think anything that you sew, and I sew with children a lot, like small children, 4 or 5 years old, right now. This is a bodice. This is Tula Pink. One of my granddaughters said, I want a pink and purple raccoon dress. And so I go to my quilt store and I say, wouldn't by any chance? And they said, yeah. And they pulled on the bolt. And so, like, that's fun. And she'll wear that all the time. Her mother will not get that off her. But yeah.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not. Um, so in your sewing room, do you have a beverage with you when you're stitching?
Uh, Probably, I drink a lot of tea.
Hmm.
I realize in my books they're always drinking tea. I drink a lot of tea and I eat a lot.
Hmm.
I eat a lot. I'm a bit of a stress eater, but yeah, there's always, yeah. I realize I've got tea and coffee stains all over my Bernina as I'm looking at her right now. She probably needs a bit of a cleanup. Yeah.
That's okay. What kind of snacks do you eat? And is there anything that's allowed? Is there any food that's allowed in the sewing room?
I think probably not spaghetti. I'm partial to Greek food, so I always have like feta and olives and things like that that aren't too messy. My husband is a wonderful cook, and he does all the dinners, so he brings me snacks. So
Is that who the character, I'm gonna mispronounce his name, Gilles is? ba-
yeah, Gilles de Wolf. Oh yeah, it's
Yes.
a great character. I love Gilles de Wolf. Actually, de Wolf, which sounds like a real fake name, is in fact my mother-in-law's family name.
Interesting.
Yeah, so and I just wanted to do, and I lived in Montreal for a while, and Gilles was the first guy I ever had a crush on when I was in high school. So he has returned into this book. But yeah, no, he's charming.
He did seem really charming. Um, is he the one who leaked some information to the press?
No,
Oh, phew.
no, no. Gilles has a very interesting role. He,
I'm looking forward to seeing where his story arc goes because first of all, he comes in and has everything to make dinner, and then he's inviting somebody who shows up at the door to come in too. He's like, "Yeah, the more the merrier. Let's just."
yeah, yeah, Gilles. And he drives a Citroën, the car.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody even knows what that is, but they have pneumatics. When I lived in Montreal and the police in France drive them, the suspension is air. So when you turn the ignition, it fills up, so the whole car rises, and when you turn it off, the whole car goes down. So anyway, so that's what Gilles drives.
Yes. I ha watching British television, sometimes that car makes an appearance. So, yeah. Is there anything else that you would love to share with our readers? Anything to like draw them into reading all the books?
Well, just try one, try novella if you want to start. And also, um, email me. All my readers, I hear like I have such interesting readers. I had actually somebody who is a wrote me about birds. I had a bird in a book, and they said, by the way, I'm a falconer with the U.S. Naval Air Force. Yes, yes.
Oh,
They actually send falcons out because, of course, birds can mess up the engines, right?
right.
But this person's doing that as their day job and coming back and reading my books. And yeah, so I love it from my readers.
Oh my goodness. You did mention one last question, one other thing. You did on your blog, you have this thing called Flypaper Thoughts. I
Oh, no
those
sewing.
those were fascinating.
Yeah, that's now that's interesting. That's my sewing blog that I kind of retired.
Hmm.
But what I have, but I liked Flypaper Thoughts is literally like thoughts that just go by my brain and I nail them down. But I actually have a Substack,
Yes, I saw
which
that.
which is called How to Be an Older Woman for Beginners.
I love that title.
And that is actually a child of Flypaper Thoughts. It's the same thing. Like sometimes I'll just be ruminating and I'll walk my dog and I'll think, oh, so I'll come back and write something there.
Now, is your dog a golden?
No, the golden is actually my daughter's dog, but he stays with me a lot.
Hmm.
Uh, and my current dog, I lost my old dog, unfortunately, but I now have a rescue um, Australian Shepherd who came up on a bus from Texas.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine? Like from South, she basically had been abandoned in the streets in South Texas, and there was a woman there who brings rescues because she has found people in Nova Scotia will, I love dogs, and will take whoever nobody in Texas wants. They're delighted in Nova Scotia. It's the craziest story. So she put 60 of them every 2.5 months, 60 of them in a school bus and drives them up to Nova Scotia. And that's how I got my current dog, whose name is Dolly.
Oh, and it's that's a very active dog if I know the breed.
Very active dog, a very active dog, and like stares at, but it's good because I walk a lot and I don't know, she needs me and she's really interested, like whatever goes on, she's like completely fascinated.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, she's lovely.
Does she come sew with you?
She does. And she's very quiet. So I looked at the only time is she'll sit on the presser foot I mean, sorry, the foot control sometimes. So you think you've come to a seam, the machine still goes. But yeah, she sticks with me. She wants to make sure she's not going anywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, I would presume so. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Don't ever think this is a hobby. This is who you are. And having worked with people who thought they were important or interesting, um, what you are doing is wonderful and it is real. And just, your own voice is all you have to do is find your authentic and do it.
Oh, that is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. Thank you, Barbara, for coming today and being on the book report. I can hardly wait to post this because this has been just such a fun conversation, and I am looking forward to your next book coming out, and we'll prepare to have you as a guest again.
Oh, thank you very. There's more quilting in the next one. I've actually have somebody has designed a table runner with a pattern just for this book.
Oh, yay! That'll be fabulous.
Yeah.
That'll be fabulous. Any idea on timing?
I think that will be the fall. That will be out.
Sweet. Sweet. We'll look forward to that. So thank you all to all of our listeners who came to enjoy us, and I will look forward to posting the next book report. Stay tuned.
So much. This